So looks like we got to answer this question again because whatever I answered disappeared just now. All right, and this one we know already. It's 5 kg. LQ is allowed. LQ is allowed as long as there is combination packaging where the where the inner does not exceed 5L and when packed in outer does not exceed 30 kgs. Right, that's number 2 was yes, can use 1A1 drums and maximum capacity was 450 liters, right? Then number 3 was the UN packing approval code. So that's what we were discussing just now, where we said that, okay, we have the 1A1 information, but we didn't have the packing group. So many of you all used Z to indicate the packing group, and rightly so, simply because it did not mention it in the case question here. Right, so you look at the UN, the SDS already showed you it's a packing group 3. So based on packing group 3, you use the Z there. Then you indicate the relative density, the pressure. Wait, I shut the door. My mom is pretty loud. Anyways, yeah, 160 kPa. And then the year of manufacture, country of manufacture, and then the manufacturer's certification number. All right, so I noticed that not all of you got this MY here, the country. I mean, from 19, you went straight to the code. Some of you went and typed 2019 here. You don't need to type 2019. I also noticed some of you put KPA here. All right, so you don't have to do that, okay? Just so you know that it's quite straightforward in that sense. Type of packaging, PG it was tested for. If it's liquid, then it's a relative density information you're looking for. And then immediately after that's the pressure, the year of manufacture, the country, and then the certification number. All right. I also noticed one of you, when you all answered LQ, kan, I noticed that you also indicated P001 and LP01. So that means you're a bit confused there. The question that refers to LQ means is asking you to only look at column number 7A, not column number 8. The question number 2 is related to column number 8, okay? Now from there we say, how would these drums be marked and labeled? So can we see, is this consignment marine pollutant?
Yes.
It is. It mentions it on the safety data sheet, right? Exactly. I just want to open the safety data sheet and identify this information for everyone's benefit. Okay. So here you can see in the IMDG column itself, they've indicated the name of the product. You can see the technical name of the substance, and it also indicates to you that it's a marine pollutant. So which means to say that when you have to indicate the marks and labels in this sense, you can just, because you don't need to draw, right? You just put them marks. So usually marks will be the UN number and the PSN. So the PSN is environmentally hazardous substances, is it? Substances, and then it's liquid, right? Liquid, and then it's NOS, and then in bracket it's that strange name. What is that thing? This, let's see if I can copy and paste it. Okay, because it's such a long name. Oh, silly damn thing doesn't let me. Can somebody?
That thing doesn't allow
Allow,
you to
yeah,
copy and paste.
real pain in the neck. I'm going to tell these people, it's IT is supposed to make life easy, not difficult. Can somebody spell it out for me? Pyriflu, and then I will type it out because I can't see both. Pyri.
Pyriflu.
Flu spell lah sayang.
FLU.
FLU.
PYRIFLU. QUI.
QUI.
And AZON.
NAZON. Okay. And then it is a class 9.
Mm.
So what you want to do, this is just the marks. Then you indicate labels.
Class 9.
Labels, you put class 9, and then you
Marine
indicate
pollutant.
marine pollutant. Yeah. And then the 5th question, the shipper intends to pack 50 of these drums into a 20-foot container. So here I saw a lot of mistakes. Okay. Many made the mistakes here because the declaration. Now, when you declare the thing, you have two options. You have the option to either indicate the number of packages and types of packages before you start the sequencing. Remember the sequencing, the 5 information that must always be one after the other. Yeah. Or you can do it after. All right. So if you choose to do it after, you 3082 and then the same story again, because the silly thing is not going to let me copy. I'm going to tell these people substances, liquid, and OS, and then this pyrifluquinazone. Okay, and then I can continue at the bottom, or I can continue in the straight line. Assuming I continue on the straight line. Class 9, PG123, and then after that I say it is a marine pollutant. Okay, and then I want to tell the type and number of packages, so I can put here 50 1A1 steel drums by 200. How much did he pack? 50.
50
They didn't
drums.
put. They didn't put the liter.
He didn't
They
put
put
the
50
lid.
drums, but generally
drums.
drums are 250,
Yeah.
200 liters anyway.
Yeah, so we just put, because the question didn't give, so we bantai the 200 liters here, and that's it. That is how you would declare. And so some of you got this all right, and good for you, really good. All right, and some of you would have probably not got it all right. So let me do a question on sorry, not question, let me do CTU code now. All right, we complete CTU code, and then after that we attempt a case study that I will share with you. There is a case study there, this one. This is not the one you will be doing, but I will share it on the screen with you. Okay, and we can answer this. See this? Hugh Chong, I'll download it, send it to you, and we will all work on this case study after we finish CTU code.
Yeah,
All right.
you download, because yesterday that question, I couldn't get it in the system, but I downloaded. You gave us in the download this in the morning.
Yeah, but then after that I put it out again because I found out where I made the mistake. It was actually my mistake on how I went about saving this exam lah. That's the problem. Then I fixed it yesterday, loaded some videos. Hold on,
I saw the videos.
Save. I'm going to save this in for you guys and send it out to you. But like I said, before we do anything, let me complete with the CTU code. So let's open up CTU code, all of you. Okay, and let's start with that. So the CTU code actually comes in at part 7. In part 7, when you're doing 7.3, where it's consigning requirements in a CTU, like you're doing it's segregation for the CTU itself. After it runs through that bits about the steps within the CPC, And then it gives you some little additional conditions. Remember yesterday we went through them for temperature controlled, and for instances when certain UN numbers, despite them being or having to be segregated from each other, like in the case of class 8, because of the segregation groups, that there are exemptions that are there, that if it can be proven that these substances will not react with each other and form into those four possibilities of hazards, then these things can be actually packed together with a condition and an acceptance from a competent authority. All right, so this takes you a little bit further because the CTU code, let me do something here and show you something else. Okay, I'm going to you're looking at my Google screen, right? And I'm going to type CTU Code 2014. That's the version that's currently available. Okay, so this CTU Code 2014, it's actually an old version. It's an updated version of the 97 version. They used to call it IMO, ILO. Can you please turn your mics off so because I can hear your background? It used to be IMO, ILO, UNECE guidelines on packing of CTUs. And once it was updated, see, at its 76th session, all right, the Inland Transport Committee of UNECE on their 76th session from 25th to 27th February 2014, IMO joined, IMO and IMO's committee came up with this new version, the CTU Code 2014. So you can actually get the CTU code online. You know, it's a PDF version. It's free, but let me just show you how it looks like. Okay. So it does not necessarily cover only dangerous goods. It is also looking at non-dangerous goods, and then there is a focus specifically on dangerous goods. All right, so this code and guidelines is, I would say, one of the most boring documents to read. And even in terms of presentation of information, yeah, they give you like here, they tell you the introduction and, you know, they put all this information here. But reading it is painful because as you can see, the way the information is presented is quite very wordy. So what we did is we took this whole thing, because if you look at this, right, there's a lot in here. And when I go further down, you will also see this, see, general transport conditions. So when they are talking about CTU, they're not necessarily talking about the container only. So after they explain all this information, because here is responsibilities. Here, let me just move it up and then I'll show you again. These are all definitions. Okay, they've given us definition. What does absolute humidity of air? What does a CTU mean? So a CTU is a freight container, a swap body, a vehicle, railway wagon, or any other similar unit, in particular when used in intermodal transport. Then they define who the carrier is. It could be a road haulier, a rail operator, or a shipping line, because CTU, right? Then what does a clean CTU mean? So these are the definitions: any previous cargo residue, any securing materials that were used for previous consignments, any marks or placards, whatever that had to do with the previous has to be removed, and that free from all of this, and that would then define what a clean CTU. And then here they describe what a closed CTU, because you tend to see this terminology very often in the IMDG code. So the closed CTU is a CTU which totally encloses the contents with permanent structures. So it could be a box truck, not just a container, but it could also be a box truck, or it could be a rail wagon, right? And then they describe certain things that happen to cargo. Certain cargoes may undergo condensation. So they explain what is condensation. Condensation is the conversion of water vapor into a liquid state, right? And then they explain to you what is a consignee and consignor, what does a consolidator do, what does contamination mean, what are corrosion thresholds, and then this is cryptoclimate in a CTU because of humidity. And it goes on, you see, goes on to describe, and this is free, so you can download this thing and keep it for yourself, okay? And then after that, it starts describing, because of the various players that are in the international transport chain. So it gives you a list of key requirements. And then these key requirements, you see, this chapter identifies those actions and tasks that are key to the safe packing and transport of cargo. So it starts with general. General, they tell you do arrange for safe working environment, do use safe handling equipment. So they cover general planning, packing of DG specifically, securing, and then upon completion of packing, what do you do? And then when you are unpacking. So a lot of these parts are taken in, like you can pick them up really quickly in order to create a dangerous goods safety checklist of your own. I mean, you can incorporate stuff from the CPC, but you can pick up a lot of things from here and create your own internal safety audit sheet, a dangerous goods audit sheet, to make sure that the person who is doing work, because always what happens is, especially for manufacturers that have the approval, like for instance in Port Klang, the manufacturers some of them sit for the CPC, the DG registration number that LPK gives you when you pass an exam to sign the CPC, because not everybody is allowed to sign CPC in Port Klang. So what happens, a bunch of manufacturers also have this, and mostly it's the seniors that come in for this. However, the senior people are usually not on the shop floor. They're not actually watching when the whole operation, I'm not saying this happens all the time, okay? So I don't want people to come back and shoot me, because remember that these are recorded versions that go on YouTube, and then somebody might come and bang me for saying not all of us do this, but I'm saying that there are some who do this. And for those who do that, I mean, it is okay ultimately if you train your downliners to follow these procedures. And one of the ways to determine that is to create a dangerous goods safety audit checklist. And this checklist will begin from before the consignment is even in your hands, to when the consignment is under your care, custody, and control, and then what needs to be done, like upon preparing for the consignment to be shipped out. Okay, so that would ensure that everything follows the guidelines that are required. So coming back to this, so here they're talking about all the key requirements here in terms of the cargo, securing of the cargo. What do you do when you complete packing? When you unpack, all right? And then it runs to chains of responsibilities. So in this here, it explains the functions of all those parties that are in a supply chain of a product, okay? So first, when they talk about functions within the supply chain, they're giving you, for instance, first the CTU operator. So the CTU operator is responsible for providing CTUs that are fit for purpose, comply with international structural integrity requirements. So the CTU operator is your box. So like when we take it in the context of sea freight, then it is your box operator. It would be your shipping lines, or sometimes you have these pure box operators. So they have to ensure that when they release a container for export, that these conditions are met. And then here they talk about the shipper's responsibility, what the shipper has to do in terms of an international move, like correctly describing the goods, including its mass and total payload, notifying packers or shipper of any unusual transport parameters of individual packages, like center of gravity that might be needed, temperature control requirements that may be needed, or any kind of sensitivities that the cargo may have. So this information has to be provided by the shipper. Also ensuring that packages and unit loads are suitable to withstand the stresses which are to be expected. So here they're giving it to you in a general sense, because when it comes to dangerous goods by sea, the IMDG code already prescribes that if you want to ship out dangerous goods, and the packages that you use for them has to be of such quality and has to be tested and obtain the UN packing approval code before they can be used. So here this bullet is referring now to non-DG cargo. And then here, providing all information that is required for proper packing, ensure that goods and packages and unit loads are adequately secured. So that is here. Then they talk about the packer's responsibility. After the packer's responsibility, they also talk further about the shipper, because you see here they put consignor. All right. Now consignor, we all know, is the shipper. And then here we put shipper as well, because there could be different situations here. All right. So it depends ultimately who is the consignor in the BL and who is the ultimate shipper. And then here they talk about the road haulier's responsibility, the rail haulier's responsibility, the carrier's responsibility, consignee's responsibility, and then shippers of empty CTUs. So these box operators and all that, that information is here as well. And after that, they go a little bit into road transportation. So when they cover road transportation here, they're talking about, see, when you securing cargo longitudinally or transverse direction, what is the acceleration levels that are required. So, I mean, we're not going to be doing, because they want to show us how cargo will move, you know, so that means that is how secure it has to be packed in order for it to be able to withstand the shocks that are involved in its individual transit type in, or, you know, mode of transport. So road, rail, and sea transport. And this is where the CTU properties come in. Okay, so I have it all in the slideshow with nice pictures and all. Upon arrival of CTU, so we also I have this all there, and it's actually quite boring to read, but I mean, it's totally up to you. Like usually if you can't sleep, you can read this thing. Yeah. So what we've done now is I'm going to share with you our version, where we have diluted it to a point where it comes in acceptable loads to you. Okay. So this IMO IILO Code of Practices, as you can see, the current one is the 2014, and it covers all this information. Yeah. General conditions, visual inspections prior to packing, packing and securing of cargo, additional advice with regards to packing and securing DG, basic principles for safe handling and securing of CTUs, and training in packing of cargo in CTUs, because a lot of people in Europe and I don't know much about US, but I would say yes, because US is actually quite far behind compared to Europe. So let's take the context of Europe, UK and Europe and all of that. Even when I went for my DGSA training, I remember that the people, my trainees, the people who are training with me, at least there were two of us, two females. The female with me was a transport manager of some company. And then there were about 7 or 8 males, out of which 5 of these males were actually truck drivers, right? Who were moving up the value chain, meaning they were, you know, going to become transport managers and DGSAs. So the point I'm trying to make, in those countries, professions like trucking also, like here in Malaysia, it's only your driver's license, you know, and then it's what the company provides. Like if a company hires a truck driver, then it becomes the company's responsibility to provide accurate and proper training for them, that it's not mandated, you know. So when something is not mandated, what happens is some companies will do, some companies won't do. So when it comes to packers too, in places like these, in UK, Europe and all that, it's a profession. It is not like just a blue collar field, you know. And there are certification courses, because this all falls under vocational training. And these people all qualify, you know, with vocational training certificates, sometimes up to diploma or degree levels. Yeah, and then they move on to management courses. So that kind of thing, I see when we come to truckers training, DG truckers training and all that, the closest I can get is Singapore. Yeah, when it comes to Asia. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, Southeast Asia, where it's mandated. So it covers all this, and the aim of it is to give some theoretical details on how do you safely pack and secure cargo in CTUs. So the purpose of this is also to advise packers. The CTU code also provides information and advice of all parties in the supply chain, up to those included in and involved in unpacking the CTU. So from the point of receipt as well. So this is the definition I covered with you. So this is a semi-trailer, yeah? Semi-trailer, container, rail wagon, but it's for trucks, semi-trailers. Actually, this is not. The semi-trailer will have wheels at the back, yeah? This is just like a truck that has a weird stand at the back to pull it over. And the main features of the CTU code is, as I showed you, the roles, responsibilities, and functions of the parties in the supply chain, the properties of CTUs, the suitabilities of CTUs, a list of do's and don'ts. What do you do when upon arrival checking of CTUs? What do you do with regards to packing and securing cargo? What are the additional advice that you need to consider when you are transporting dangerous goods? How do you go about unpacking, and what are the consequences of improper packing? So in the chain of responsibilities, it indicates these parties, and we are well aware that from the seller to the buyer, there are multiple parties involved in the whole chain of events. And the multiple parties can be of, like for instance, when it comes to the road haulier, the forwarding agent, the freight forwarder, you can actually have one party that handles the entire door-to-door move. However, even that one party will not be the main carrier. All right, and in most instances. So the main carriers, depending on the mode of transport, you will then have multiple contracts in between people, and even between shipper and seller. They have other trade related contracts, finance contracts, depending on whether an LC is used, there would be that to be considered, and various other rules and regulations. Um, so here they generally indicate the relationship. So what they're actually trying to identify here is the relationship of function at the start of the supply chain. A sender and a consigner may be considered as the same function under certain circumstances, and may also be referred to as the shipper. However, the shipper may act as the processor of information, receiving information about the cargo and packing details from the consigner, who is the sender or the packer or the consolidator respectively. So this is the kind of English they are using. Now let me explain this in pure simple English. What they're trying to explain here is you can have two instances of a shipper. You can either be the shipper who is the originator of the cargo, meaning the shipper is the manufacturer. You could have a shipper that is a trader, or you could have a shipper that is the agent, you know, the 3PL, the logistics service provider. So ultimately, there are various levels of where you could say you are a shipper or a sender of the goods, right? Depending on how the arrangement of the entire move is. And then it touches a little bit of on Incoterms, in a sense that it explains very simply to you what the just they break it down to the simple 11 terms. But remember, this is 2014. So they're using an old term like delivered at terminal doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it does. I mean, Incoterms is not like a rule that if 2020 came out, then 2010 cannot be used. It can be used, but I mean, what they're explaining here is the roles and responsibilities between the seller and buyer. But we have to take note that when we cover dangerous goods, even the seller and buyer are in, say, FOB or a CPT kind of a relationship, freight prepaid or a freight collect relationship. The responsibility for the shipper of the dangerous goods that is from door to door. So that's because of international laws. And Incoterms is not a law. Incoterms is just a bunch of rules that guides buyers and sellers and buyers, right? It doesn't have any legal standard at all. And now we go to CTU Properties. So when we go to CTU Properties, what the CTU code does now is acquaint the packers on specific characteristics that need to be understood with regards to CTUs. So whenever we acquaint ourselves, we have to look at what is the net and gross capacity of the CTU, so you know how much you can pack in there. What is the flooring strength of the CTU, and whether if you have a very heavy cargo to be packed into the CTU, whether the anchor and securing points are there. And if, for instance, your CTU require, or the cargo that you're packing into the CTU requires certain thermal capabilities, so that needs to be checked as well. The seals and weatherproofness of the CTU as well. So now when we touch, because now when I show you the CTU code, it's really long. They break it down step by step by step by step by step. However, in this, we will touch on it further when we hit the container again, because we will be touching on the CSE plate as well. So here is when upon arrival of a CTU, when a CTU comes in, the type of CTU that is used for transport, they say, will influence the process conforming to it if it is fit for transport. You want to send a consignment from Port Klang to Kuching. You wouldn't use rail transport. Yeah, the train doesn't go underwater. So that's what they mean. Your CTU must conform to the type of transport. If, for instance, you are shipping out a 5.2 cargo, and the 5.2 cargo does not have any stabilizers in it, so you will need a T23 tank in that sense. So that's what it means by getting a specific CTU that conforms to the cargo and is fit for the transit or the transport that it's intended for. Also, another thing, CTU's positioning will influence. Okay, so CTUs used for transport will also influence the positioning that best suits it for packing operations. So, and timing. Some companies have loading bays where, say for instance, if we relate this to a container, a sea container, and an empty container is sent to the shipper's premise for packing, what is always or needs to be identified before the CTU or the container is sent for packing to the shipper's premise is whether the shipper has a loading bay, or whether you would require, or would the shipper require for the container to be on the ground, right? So in that sense, you need to understand how the positioning, also depending on the recipient, the area of receival or the area for loading of the cargo. Then of course, you have to obviously plan your cargo packing, as in if you have multiple packages, especially I think the best planners are the CFS guys, because there are so many types of cargoes being sent, multiple shippers to specific destinations. Now, when a CTU comes to you, for instance, because let's take the situation in our country, all right? As what even Prunella mentioned yesterday, the drivers, the haulage drivers, it is not really their, well, I cannot say the word not really, right? But they don't do this. They do not go to the depot and physically check the container. You won't even get them to do this. Right? They will not do this inspection of a container before they pick it up to move it to the shipper's premise for it to be stuffed in. What happens is whatever container that is allocated by the depot or the shipping lines in that matter, because the shipping lines would have checked with the depot on releasing numbers to them so that they can provide these numbers to the shipper in order for the shipper to arrange to pick these containers or container for that matter. So in that sense, it's a pre-arranged container, and the haulier goes there, picks up the container, brings it to the shipper's premise. Now, when they bring it to the shipper's premise, only then we can start the whole process. But the process of inspecting the unit, even before you do your weatherproof testing, where you go inside and you want to do a light test to see whether the container has any holes or not. Wait, sorry, I want to off my fan. It's blowing on my head. You have to first look at the CSE safety approval plate. Okay, the CSE safety approval plate will be the first step in your container inspection, because this plate will indicate to you, for instance, when is the next, first and foremost, it will qualify whether the container is seaworthy or not. Because if it doesn't have a CSE safety approval plate, it has not gone through the requirements based on the UN guidelines, and you shouldn't be using these containers. Secondly, by citing the safety approval plate, you are able to identify the age of the unit. How old is that container? Because certain cargoes, they want newer containers, right? It will indicate to you also what is the maximum net and gross weight that the container can take. And one of the most important things is the inspection. So when we look at the plate, we will definitely see the PES, because all of them will have the PES, but not all of them will have the ASAP. So when we look at the PES, we want to see when does it expire. That means when is the next inspection. If it is 6 months more to an inspection to the expiry, you shouldn't be accepting this unit, because sometimes anything happens. There's so many delays. Let's take this COVID-19. Nobody expected containers to be sitting in the ports or wherever they were left for such a long time, right? So, and now we know, we are quite sure that the world is such a crazy place that anything can possibly happen. And because of climate change, remember that now COVID, tomorrow there'll be something else. Okay, so this is generally going to happen. This is going to be part of our lives. So the first thing to do is check the safety approval plate, check the periodic examination inspection program, and which is this one, and see if it has also ASAP. Okay, because ASAP indicates that containers are inspected at major interchanges. So we don't know where these major interchanges are. It is up to these owners or shipping lines who will decide where these containers are. Then when after we have checked the safety approval plate, we then have to do an exterior inspection of the unit. So this is a visual inspection. And when we do this visual inspection of the unit, first the external of the container, what we want to see is the structural strength of the unit, where we will focus on the walls. The walls should not be distorted. There should be no rusts, right? The floor must be smooth. There should be no broken flooring or protruding nails, because that would not only hurt people who are going to work that container, but it would also damage the packages when you drag them in, right? And of course, the roof of the CTU. The second thing you want to look at is the doors. The door has to work, because you're putting dangerous goods in there. And in the instance there is any accident or incident, you should be able to reach for those goods without having to struggle with the door. And then number 3 relates to flat racks. If you know what flat rack containers are. Flat rack containers are known as collapsible containers. So these are containers that do not have a roof, but they have these 4 walls. The 4 walls though are collapsible. So these 4 collapsible walls are generally collapsed depending on the size of the cargo. So sometimes you have this really huge machinery, like big, huge tractors and stuff, and they can't fit into nicely into a tiny, into a lovely closed unit. So they have to sit on a flat rack. So if they are oversized in width, what will happen is the side walls then are dropped, right? They're folded in, they're secured, and then the tractor is on top and the front and the rear walls are still there, right? So it depends whether it's width or length. So what this is trying to say is if it is width or if it is length, which means that either one of the sides you are not going to use, fold that thing properly, secure it nicely, and then only start with securing your whatever cargo on top. And then here,
Reshma,
yes.
I think generally, if we are talking about Malaysia, we are using the flat rack that has only the both ends available. The side ones, I don't think it's available in Malaysia.
Oh no, I have
Um,
used those, the
is
side
it?
wall ones. Yes, I have, because I
Uh,
had done, but yeah, to say I have used it out of Malaysia, no, I have brought boats in, you know, those big, huge power boats, the luxury yachts.
yeah,
So we have used flat racks where the side walls were collapsed. But yeah, you're probably right. Out of Malaysia, maybe Tada unit. It's very hard because I did also, I don't know how many years ago. Even then we had to position these
report.
units here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had
you
to
have to
report the
report.
units, exactly.
Yeah. So most of the ones that we have is front and back. If you talk about the 4 sides, it's more the open top,
Yeah.
whereby you're talking about height cargos.
Yeah, that is because four sides rigid, your open tops are not collapsible. Only
Yeah,
the
just
roof
to
is ille.
yeah,
Tada roof aja.
yeah, just to warn those who are using the open top containers, it comes with a tarpaulin.
Yeah.
So you watch out on the tarpaulin
Check for
because
tears or whatever.
if it's all folded up inside and not secured on the top where you have to do the opening yourself,
Mm.
put it up and check for tears. Because
Exactly.
if that's how you are receiving
Even the
it,
rings also. Exactly.
yes,
Because the
because
securing rings, sometimes there are little tiny tears to begin with
yeah,
and
check with
don't secure.
tears
Yeah. Yeah.
because it will come back to you at a
Yeah,
cost.
exactly. Exactly. In fact, we covered this here, all right, where we indicate that if you are using any tarpaulins or any kind of coverall, okay, you have to make sure that the eye, you know, where the securing takes place, like if it's a fabric material, then around that ring, we call the ring the eye, around the ring where you put your rope in to secure that, even around the ring you have to pay very close focus to, because around the ring you can have these tiny tears, and when you're securing your cargo, by the time mid journey what will happen is it'll tear out of those rings, and then after that water will go into your container, and like what Prunella said, finish for you. Remember that you're freight forward, especially if you're a freight forwarder, you have to be very, very careful because of the liabilities. Yeah. So here, any component that can be adjusted, moved, or a pin that can be engaged or withdrawn should be checked to see that it can be moved easily and restrained correctly. Removable swinging headers of open-top CTU should be inspected. There you go, they've mentioned that. And then here they talk about road vehicles that are likely to be carried on rail wagons or on ro-ro ships. They should be provided with points for securing them. Prunella,
Just
did you
to
all
share,
still have a lot of ro-ro ships going in and out of your harbors there?
we have once a year, once a month for the new vehicles.
Okay.
for the cars. But there's one thing that I need to share with you. This was shared by another freight forwarder. Is that when you're
Okay.
using the flat racks, you know where the area of the springs are
Yeah.
that they use
Yeah.
at the bottom where nobody looks at.
Yeah.
Okay. You when you receive it, you generally don't see the top, you don't see the size, you don't check for missing things, correct?
Mm,
When
mm,
you receive the consignment. I guess from now onwards, it's advisable to actually photograph that whole panel there at the bottom if you are receiving any, because they can come back to you and says, oh, you lost a spring because you guys did not, you know, and that stupid spring could have just been lost for years
mm.
with no
You're right. Thank
observation.
you for telling
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I agree. So I agree. In a sense, thank you very much for reminding everyone that ultimately, when you deal with third parties, you have to evidence everything. Literally, you cannot accept that you can talk them into something, or you can muscle your way through. So the only way to deal with when you are working with third parties is make sure that you evidence with photographs. Yeah, always remember that. And it's not
Um,
really.
you have to remember that the bill from the shipping line for those containers that they so-called damage and stuff like that
Mhm.
will only come to you 3 to 6 months later.
Yeah.
So you will never realize that any of such things. So whatever record that you have on your containers that you use, those records need to be with you for at least a minimum of 6 to 8 months
Mhm.
before you throw the pictures away. It's a lot of hassle, but
Yeah.
if you don't start doing it,
I
your
would I would
company,
recommend everyone to load their pictures into cloud lah, because that would be the
yeah,
easiest. So you don't have to worry about throwing. You just collect them into clouds. And nowadays there are a lot of systems that would help out as well, where the whole thing is done on a digital platform. You take photo, it's captured, and then it's all collected in the cloud, because that's going a little bit further into it. But like what Prunella mentioned, try and keep your documents for more than 6 months. I usually recommend people to keep it for about a year, because they usually come back and bite you within any time between 6 to 12 months, after. So
if you
just,
are, if I think some of you are dealing with chemicals, powder forms and stuff like that. It is very advisable for you to take pictures as you offload, because a lot of times the bags, the ears of the bags normally get damaged, and when the forklift operator picks it up, you
it's
get a
already
lot of,
torn.
it's
Yeah.
already torn, and the cleaning charges that will come, even if you have cleaned the stupid container clean and clean, they'll come out with a bill and tell you there's a cleaning charge of so much.
Okay. Noted. Right. Back to this, all right, where they're talking about road vehicles, and this is only when we're moving these things onto ro-ro ships, where you have to ensure that there are proper securing points. And if a container arrives with labels, marks, or placards that have nothing to do with your consignment, remove them. And then when you do your exterior check, when you undertake your exterior check, you must pay particular attention to ensure that there are no signs of recontamination at these areas, which is along the bottom rails, the forklift pockets, in and around twist lock fittings. This is for your trucks, the underside and cross members, and even on top if necessary, yeah, to check and see. Now, when we do the interior inspection of a CTU, what is advisable for a closed CTU is, before you start the inspection, just open the door and air it, okay, because it can be quite smelly. and you want to regularize the internal atmosphere with a little bit of the external atmosphere. And when you do an interior inspection, you must make sure that there are no major damages such as broken flooring or protrusions like nails, bolts, or if there are any requirements for any special fitting, check and see. And just like what when you do an exterior and interior inspection, remember to evidence it with photographs. Yeah, make sure whichever area that you are paying attention to, or it's like when you do a car rental as well, you pick up the car from a car rental company before they release the car. They run through the entire car with you. So that's pretty much what you're doing with the container before you start packing or doing anything. You go to all the main points, you take the photographs that are required so that you have this evidence of before and after. So you will have before and you will have after as well. There should be no signs of any kind of liquids or stains on the flooring or the sidewalls of the container. Of course, the container has to be weatherproof, and generally what we do is the light test. You get inside and then you check and see if there are any pocket hole of lights. And if you have a heavy cargo that you're probably putting into an open top, you have to ensure these cargo tie-down cleats or rings when they are provided, is what Prunella also pointed out. Open this, check everything. Evidence photograph when you receive this, and check and see whether everything is in good condition. Now, if these tie down cleats or rings are torn a bit, rusted, or slightly broken, they will not withstand the stresses of the journey. They should be changed. A container should be clean, dry, and free of residue and any persistent odors from previous cargo. All right, and now when we come to packing and securing of cargo, packers must make sure that, of course, you plan the process before you start the process. And then you identify if you have more than one type of DG, if these DGs are compatible or they need to be segregated. You also take a look at parts of the safety data sheet that indicate to you whether you need to undertake any special handling for the cargoes that you're carrying out in your packing process. And you have to make sure that you fulfill or you do not exceed the maximum permitted payload of the CTU. Also, you have to pay attention to restrictions on concentrated loads, and you have to comply. This is in terms of the center of gravity. All right. And the cargo and securing materials must comply with international standards and phytosanitary standards if applicable, depending on what is used as a securing. The securing material must be strong for its intended purpose. If it's stretched out, you've secured cargo and you've stretched it to a point, forcing it, that would generally mean that you have overstressed the securing material, that during the journey, at some point, the securing material will snap. So it has to be strong enough, okay? It has to be in good enough order without any tears, fractures, or other damages. And it must be appropriate to the CTU that it is intended to be used in. Now, there are certain principles when it comes to packing, that when you pack a container or a truck or a train or even a plane and a ship when they stow, that stowage is done with the load being evenly distributed. That stowage and packing techniques are suitable to the nature of the cargo, and that whenever packing is done, that it's done taking into account of safety hazards, so that you can avoid any risks of these hazards. When it comes to securing cargo in CTUs, tightly arranged cargoes are stored in CTUs, that boundaries of the CTUs are not overstressed. And in the case of CTUs with weak or without boundaries like these open trucks or even a flat rack, sufficient securing forces are produced by cargo securing arrangements. Packages of greater size, mass, or shape have to be individually secured. All right. If, for instance, they are packed with other cargoes, because this heavy, big mass or high shaped cargo, if you don't properly secure them, when the ship sways or depending on which mode it goes, right? We are now concerned with sea, and the ship can sway up to about 45 degrees or more. You do not want these heavy ones because of gravity to drop and then damage all the other cargoes. Now comes the part about dangerous goods in the CTU code. So the part about dangerous goods begins with first saying that first find out when you have dangerous goods tendered for transportation, find out first whether it's an international or a domestic transport. So if it's an international transport, the second thing you need to determine is the mode of transport, because some dangerous goods cannot go on some modes of transport. So you need to determine what mode of transport is relevant for that, or is intended and relevant for that product, for the cargo. The second thing is they say for combined transport involving several modes of transport other than sea, the rules and regulations applicable depend on whether it's a national or international movement. So we have a lot of these issues here because Malaysia has not ratified the ADR. So when we have a DG consignment that's probably coming out of Perak, let's say, and it's going to Singapore. So in Malaysia, this will go by truck. It won't go by sea. It will move by truck, in a Malaysian truck, all the way from that point in Perak to the border, the causeway, yeah, in JB. When it hits the causeway, unfortunately, the Malaysian truck now cannot go into Singapore, because in Singapore, you need to have, they follow the ADR, they've ratified it. So you need to have a ADR approved truck and an ADR approved driver. That means a trained driver. So what happens, it gets then transloaded into another truck, which is the Singaporean truck and the Singaporean truck driver. So this is an instance where you need to see, for instance, you have to prepare this in advance. If you do not know about these rules and regulations when you are sending cargo to another country, like for instance, if you were shipping out dangerous goods in a tank and you were shipping it out to the US. So when you ship it out to the US, yes, we all have these international guidelines of the UN number, the PSN and whatnot. But then when this thing, especially if it's a door delivery, you have to see what the CFR 49 indicates in terms of that tank now being loaded onto a truck and then being moved to the consignee's premise. So what is peculiar to that country? And you cannot just say, oh, no, my responsibility is send it up to the port. Because especially when it goes to the US, the Coast Guards also will not allow it to be unloaded from the ship if it is not in compliance to the CFR 49. All right. So similarly, when things are going to Europe or the Commonwealth countries, certainly there are certain aspects of the rules that are slightly different. And when it goes to any destination, some countries, their legislations may be controlling certain dangerous goods, maybe because they have issues in terms of controlling heist of that product. So probably in that sense, they might require some further provisions relating to some, permits and whatnot. So then it becomes a requirement that the shipper needs to know these things. And usually the shipper will depend on the agent to find out these details on their behalf. So depending on the mode of transport, you pick the proper code and guidelines. So if it is road, it's the ADR. If it's rail, it's the RID. And of course, we know for air and sea, we've got the IATA DGR, and for sea, we have the IMDG code. So if because we're in IMDG for maritime transport, the IMDG code applies and it gives aspects. So here they're covering up parts of the consignment procedures where they relate to the IMDG code, indicates that you have to follow this, the general provisions, the marking, labeling, the placarding, the documentations, and the special provisions for marking. And then they talk about before you pack dangerous goods, what information should be provided by the shipper. Now the shipper has to provide the UN, of course, the 5 basic information. The UN, the PSN, the main hazard, the sub hazard if there is, and the packing group. Now in addition to that, they also have to indicate the total type and number of packages, right? And any other information like the safety data sheet. They have to indicate, for instance, uh, if the consignment has already been prepared for export, they have to be accompanied with an invoice and a packing list, right? And they have to ensure that all these dangerous goods have been packaged following the requirements of the IMDG code, that they've been packed, marked, labeled, placarded, provided with the required signs that are applicable to the IMDG code, and that a declaration has been carried out. The shipper must ensure that the cargoes to be transported are authorized for transport by the modes to be used during the transport. They must ensure that depending on the mode of transport, the code and guidelines that they are looking at as a reference point is the current version, not the old version, because the old version might give you wrong information. They have to make sure that when dangerous good is handled, packed, secured, it has to be done under direct and identifiable supervision of a responsible person. And then these are like simple housekeeping stuff. Suitable measures to prevent fire should be taken, like not allowing people to smoke in the vicinity where dangerous goods are. That damaged dangerous goods should not be packed into the CTU. And when pelletized or unitized cargoes are used, they should be compacted and they should be regularly shaped. And they say that with appropriate vertical sides and level at the top, and they should be secured to minimize damage, and securing material must be compatible. The packing and the method of securing DG in the CTU must be planned before you start packing it, because you want to know what goes in first, what do you pack, what materials, how do you secure it in the container. So all this has to be planned before you start doing. You don't just immediately start doing the packing process. Special care should be taken during loading to avoid damage to the packages. Yeah, if packages are damaged or leaking, the area where that leak or the damage has occurred, that area should actually be evacuated and assess the potential hazard of that area, and isolate the stuff and deal with that. That then has to be dealt differently. When you have more than one DG to be packed, you've got to use the segregation table to identify whether you can actually pack these dangerous goods together. Yeah, and you have to ensure that the classes that have to be separated from foodstuffs, that you make sure you do not pack those dangerous goods from with foodstuffs. And you must make sure that people don't eat or drink while they are handling dangerous goods. And when drums are used, drums have to be stored in an upright position. Also, stacking height, stacking loads, all this must be considered when packing into a CTU, because that's why you have stack tests to identify how much weight can a certain package withstand, right? So you have to ensure that it fulfills or follows the stacking weight limitations. You don't overstack on top. DG, if you have a CTU that has non-DG and DG, then DG has to be closer to the door. And because you only need to mark and label one side of the package, you must make sure that that mark and label side of the package is oriented towards the door of the CTU, the container. So when you open, you can see it straight away. And then you have now completed, assuming you have done everything, you've checked the packages, checked the documents, everything is in order, the container has been packed, you have taken it into account, the securing materials, the securing areas, the general condition of the container, the condition of the packages, the compatibilities, everything is done. The container is nice and secure. Now comes time for you to actually shut the container. So this is upon completion of packing. What do you need to do? You need to now indicate the placards of the hazardous substances that you have packed into the container. So you put the placards of the hazard symbols related to the classes that have been packed in. Also take into account on if, for instance, you have packed more than 4,000 kgs of a single UN number, then you would have to also indicate the UN number either in the placard or on an orange panel. So you indicated depending on the CTU, or that many sides, yes. And also here they tell you whenever dangerous goods present several risks, subsidiary risk placard should be displayed in addition to primary risk. So if you have, which you know already, which we learned in packaging, a marking and labeling of a package. If the UN number has got more than one hazard, we have to communicate that. We saw that in the marking and labeling, that same thing gets declared because it is a hazard, and the same thing gets placarded. And even when we do segregation, we refer to both the main and the sub-hazards as well. So don't forget, we need to indicate them. If a CTU contains cargoes of more than one class, however, they don't need to bear the subsidiary hazard placard if the hazard placard is already indicated by a primary risk hazard. So for instance, you have, you can see my whiteboard. For instance, you have a container, and in this container, you have, say, 3 packages. And these 3 packages, one is a main class 3 and a subclass 8. The other is a subclass 8 and a main class 8 and a subclass 3. And the other one is another is 6.1 and 8. All right, so if you had all these 3, so we're just saying that all these 3 on a are compatible. Okay, we're just going to assume that they are compatible for this exercise. So each package you would have indicated, right? You would have put a 3, and then you would have put an 8, and then say this drum you would have put an 8, and you would have put a 3, and then this other drum you would have put a 6.1, and you would have put an 8, right? So when you pack it into the container, you would say, hey, I got to put the same thing because, yeah, they said I have to put the same thing. But what the code is saying is, if, for instance, you have more than one dangerous goods packed into the container, and the subsequent goods, that means one of the goods, because you have to indicate the primary and the subsidiary hazard, if the second package or the subsequent package, if that subsidiary hazard happens to be the primary hazard of another substance that you have packed in, same class, then you don't need to indicate the subsidiary hazard symbol. So in this sense, this this package subsidiary hazard is this package's main hazard. In this one, this package subsidiary hazard is this package's main hazard. And then here, this package's subsidiary hazard again is this package's main hazard. So technically you will only be putting 3 class hazards here, 3, 8, and 6.1. All right, so that's what this one is telling you. And then it says here where individual schedules in the code indicate no hazard labels or class marking is necessary on individual packages, then no placard or class marking is required on the CTU. UN number is displayed on the unit in accordance to 4416. For maritime cargo, any CTU containing package DG of a single commodity, this is the 4000 kg one, the information that I indicated to you where you have to indicate in the orange panel. And then this is if you have a cooling substance that has been used in the packaging, then you have to indicate the cooling substance symbol. All right, and similarly if it has been fumigated. So this is the cooling substance label, and this is the fumigation warning label. All right, and then finally it says for transport by sea, they're referring to the SOLAS convention here, where they say SOLAS convention chapter 4 regulation 4 talks about chapter 7 regulation 4 talks about the requirement of a container or a vehicle packing certificate. It says here, this requires that the person responsible for packing of DG into a container or a road vehicle must provide a signed container packing certificate or vehicle declaration stating that the cargo in the unit has been properly packed and secured and that all applicable transport requirements are met. And then this is part of the, yes, sorry.
Sorry. Just need to go back to the part where you talk about the orange rectangle panel.
Yeah.
That you said that we have to use it with black digits, and write the UN number. Can that UN number be written with a marker, or it should be spray paint on the orange panel?
As
The
long as
orange
it's
picture.
legible. It
So
doesn't
it
have to
doesn't-
be, yeah. A lot of people print, like if it's a big manufacturer, they would print a lot of those UN numbers. But if
Yeah.
it's like a one-off thing, right? You don't have all the time
Correct.
that shipment.
Yep.
Sorry. You can use a permanent marker as
Mhm.
long as it's legible, it's clear. It must be clearly written.
So it must always be orange or
With a, yeah,
white.
orange. It has to be orange. It's an orange panel.
Okay.
Right, so it has to be orange with the black characters, your alphabet side black. They're black digits. And then they also give you the height of
Because in your notes it says against a white in lower half of the class play card or on an orange rectangular. So the white is the one that is the explosive stickers with the bottom part.
the
It's like
white, because no. The white is referring to road transport because this is CTU code, right? They're going to talk about road and they're going to talk about rail and sea. The orange panel is for sea, for
Okay.
sea transportation. Okay, the white background is for the road transportation because they don't use the orange panels there. Right, where was I? Yeah. Right, so here, yeah, coming back to this. So this is the checklist in the container packing certificate. Remember the first one, the container was clean, dry, and fit to receive goods. Packages which needed to be segregated were not packed together. So this is all part of that. And it's just repeating all this. And then it tells you the container vehicle packing certificate is not required for portable tanks. Tanks you don't pack, you fill. You'll need a packing certificate. And remember, you cannot use a flexi tank here for dangerous goods. And then here they say a CPC or a VPC is not required for these modes of transport. However, such certificates will be needed if the transport operation includes sea voyages. You will then need to be, they will then need to be provided prior to loading, as port authorities, berth operators, and ship masters may wish to cite them before accepting the containers or vehicles on board their ship. For international road transport under ADR, when several items of dangerous cargoes are packed together in a single CTU, the shipper should declare that such as mixed packing is not prohibited. So this is part of the ADR. So you have to learn that first to understand what that's telling you. The function of DG declaration and of the CPC can be incorporated into a single document, which is now currently being done. A lot of the multimodal dangerous goods form act as both a declaration and a certificate as well. And if these functions are incorporated into a single document, example, a declaration form, a shipping note, the inclusion of phrases such as it is declared that the packing of the cargoes into the vehicle or freight container has been carried out in accordance to the applicable provisions of 5.4.2.2, which refers to the container packing certificate. Where both declarations are included in a single document, separate signatures are required. See, which is not actually happening. I know a lot of times people are just one signature only on this. And then they start out of nowhere, start talking about if the doors of containers or vehicles are locked, the means of locking should be such a construction of such a construction that it's easily open. Like right after the whole document, suddenly this pops in. And then further, they go where dangerous goods are kept in a combined transport terminals in port areas. Reference must be made on the IMO document for handling in port related areas. Then CTUs packed with DG cargo should only be collected from terminals by a driver who has been properly trained and instructed, because that's generally how it is. You should not be driving DG if you're not trained to drive DG. The driver should possess a driving training certificate, provided that he is allowed to drive a vehicle carrying dangerous goods of the classes contained. Yeah, because in the ADR, when you go for your when the driver goes for training, there is all package training, and there is tank training, and there is all class training, and there is specifically class 1 and class 7 training. So that's why they are saying it should say that before departure, he should be provided with all relevant documentation for the DG, as well as with written instructions on the action to be taken in the case of incidents involving dangerous goods. When receiving CTUs, the receiver should ascertain that the unit is externally in good condition and without damage. Evidence it, take a photograph. If there is any damage, the receiver should document and notify. Specific attention must be paid to damage that may have influenced the condition of the cargo. And the receiver that detects any damage during the discharge of the unit must document and notify. If a package that contains dangerous goods is found to be damaged when you are unloading it, all right, you got to immediately evacuate the area to ascertain the hazard. Persons opening the CTU must be made aware of the risk of the cargo and of how the cargo might, for instance, probably just fall out of the unit. So when doors are opened, they must be opened with care. A CTU that carries DG, which is in which expendable refrigerants have been used or which have been shipped under fumigation, may present a special risk, right? The risk of either explosive or toxic or an asphyxiant nature. So this must be indicated with a label on the door. CTU should be ventilated by leaving it open for a sufficient time, or other steps are taken to ensure that no harmful concentration of gases remain. And then where you have flammable cargo, you must make sure that that you don't handle or do anything with them where there could be any source of ignition in the vicinity of them. If there is a particular reason to suspect danger because of damage to a package or the presence of any fumigants, you must seek expert advice. Here they talk about cleaning the container. Okay, after a CTU or dangerous goods has been unpacked, particular care should be taken to ensure that there are no hazards remain in the CTU. This might mean cleaning it, particularly if the spillage is of a toxic nature. A CTU that has no hazards within it, that means it's been totally cleaned up, nothing is in there, it's empty, then you remove all these signs and symbols that may tell you otherwise. If a CTU shows signs of abnormally high temperatures, it should be moved to a safe place. Now, this is the ones that have our thermally unstable substances or organic peroxides or polymerizing substances, be it in IBCs, packages, or in containers. If they exceed the temperatures were given, I ran through that with you guys, 50 degrees, I believe, in IBCs and 45 degrees in containers. Then for it, that should be moved away to a safe place, and you should notify the fire services. Care should be taken to ensure that firefighting methods are used that are suitable to the cargo. Refer to the safety data sheet. Attention is drawn to the fact that the receiver is normally obliged to return the CTU after discharging, cleaning, and that suitable transport is used when you have to deliver that back. This applies especially when dangerous goods or obnoxious cargoes are being transported. And then this is the ICHCA and IICL. These are the other two bodies. This is for chemical. ICHCA is for chemical and hazardous. It's an international body, and IICL are for containers. The receiver shall keep in mind that he may be held responsible for all damage to the CTU other than those that have been officially observed and endorsed by the operator prior to the transfer of the unit to the receiver. All right, so that's why it's so important that even if you are a recipient, if you're an importer, you make sure that your seller, your shipper does the before, during, and after photographing as well, right? Just as much as you are, because the operator may just come back like what Prunella says, 6 to 9 months down the line with a big fat bill, on some damage to their units. And then here comes the do's and don'ts. Do arrange for safe working condition. Do be safe. Do be safe when handling equipment. Do use appropriate PPE. Do check the CTU. Do not smoke or eat during packing, securing. And then in planning, do select the most suitable CTU to accommodate. Prepare the packing plan when it's deemed necessary. Select proper securing material. Do not go beyond the payloads that are allowed. And you can see that information if it's a container on the CSC plate. And then distribute heavy cargo appropriately over the floor area. Observe all handling instructions and symbols. Like if it says this side up, then this is the side up. Don't do it any other way. Load with center gravity correctly located. Don't concentrate heavy cargoes into small areas, or do not load eccentric load distributions. Do not build up irregular layers, small, big, small. Sometimes my staff do that also in the office. They'll put something like that, and they'll put a smaller thing and then a bigger thing on top. Don't laugh. Lucky they are not packers. They're just working in the office. If it's a packer, you'll be kicked out for doing such things, right? Store heavy goods on top of light goods. And then store liquids on top of solids or solids on top of liquids. What do you say?
Solid on top.
Yeah, if
Liquid
you
on
put
top.
liquids on top of solid, your liquid DG or solid also all habis. So solids on top of liquids, right?
Just to share,
Mm.
if you are not loading it on a full CTU, or you are using an LCL to ship, assuming that whatever you're moving is that the
001.
the sticker that you actually have, you also have to put additional information on the box or whatever it is, that you do not have another things on top of your box.
Yeah, that is
Especially,
that means if you cannot stack on top of your load lah.
yeah, because if you're using LCL shipment, or you're using a break bulk vessel to move
They
those
will just
shipments.
pack it. Yeah, they will just put it.
They will just put it whatever on top, and then on arrival it's a gone case.
Yeah.
So my advice to you is like ship nowadays roll like nobody's business. So the securing of it is not as expected. And we have seen a lot of cases on arrival that, you just cannot do anything about it. So this is just additional information for you guys.
Okay. Thank you. So make sure that if your cargo is not stackable, that means you can't have stacks on top of them, that you indicate it on the exterior of your packaging, where similarly it's like where orientation information may also be very important, all right? Because if you don't show an orientation information, and if your package can withstand a stack load or not, chances are this would be assumed, and then you'll have disaster by the time the cargo reaches the recipient, even before it reaches the recipient. Store goods with tainting odors together with said. Do not store. That means do not put durian with milk. Yeah, you put durian with milk, what will happen? The milk will smell of durian. So same thing, if you have a very pungent odor cargo, do not put it with sensitive cargoes that may absorb that smell, okay, the odor. Do not pack wet and damp goods if it can be avoided. Do not use securing or protection equipment which is incompatible with the goods, because in the journey it would react, or it would cause the cargo to react. Check all packages have been properly marked and labeled, that all dangerous goods have been followed in terms of packing. That means, if it's above 30 kgs, 30 liters, these have to be in UN approved packages. Do pack dangerous goods closer to the door, especially if you have mixed loads of DG and non-DG. Do ensure that the placards are indicated on the doors of the CTU. Do not put incompatible DGs in the same CTU, even if you get a value 1. Don't do that. Don't pack don't pack damaged, dangerous goods into the CTU. And when it comes to securing, ensure that you fill up void spaces, because void spaces, when the ship sways, is the problem. It'll fall down in those void spaces. Use blocking, lashing, or a combination of these methods to prevent cargo from sliding and tipping in any direction. Secure the cargo in a way that forces the distribution over an appropriate area of the unit. That means the distribution of the weight. Um, Secure each single loaded item independently. That means if you have like these big if you have pallets as well, and in between the pallets you may want to either put a block or lash or some kind of choke there in between. And if it's just a pallet and a few other things, then make sure that you independently secure the pallet, and then say you have a couple of other stuff in that container as well. Do use non-slip surface materials to refrain packages from sliding where necessary. Use hooks or shackles to fasten lashings. Do not secure cargo with devices that may overstress the structure of the unit and also the securing devices. And don't over tighten it, because sometimes you think if you over tighten it, it's secure, but no, what will happen is it'll damage the goods. And do not fasten web lashings by means of knots. You have to use more than that. And when you complete, make sure that you can determine that to make sure that you determine the correct gross mass of the CTU, that you fix the seal, and that you indicate the CTU number, the gross weight when required, and the seal number in the appropriate documents. Usually in the CPC, we will indicate these things. Yeah, do provide a packing certificate when required. And when you unpack, they give you a certain other number of guidelines to check the identification number on the container and the seal number when you receive it. Check the exterior for any signs of leakage or infestation. The container comes in, first do an exterior check. This is your inbound. Use proper equipment to cut off the seal. Make sure that the CTU is safe to enter your premise. And for instance, if the cargo is sensitive to heat, ignitions, wetness, direct sunlight, make sure that all these conditions have been taken into account. Okay. Open the CTU with caution because you don't know how the party who has shipped the cargo to you have secured it. Who knows, it might just fall off. Record every package as it is removed, noting any markings or any marks or damages. Yeah. Remove all securing and protecting equipment for, you can possibly reuse it. So remove it in such a manner that you can either reuse or recycle. Clean the interior of the CTU to remove any traces of the cargo, especially if you've had loose powders. Yeah, that's what, again, what Prunella told us about. Like if you're having bags with, and you've used dangerous, and your cargo is solid, powdered, dangerous goods. And if you have loaded these bags individually, that means you have not pelletized them. And chances are you could have some bags damaged. So be careful when you are unloading this and take note of it, because remember, these are dangerous goods. Ensure that the PPEs are in standby. So how do you know what PPEs are needed? Take a look at the safety data sheet and that will indicate to you. Remove all marks, placards, housekeeping, okay, when you're done. And that's about it. So this is your CTU code, right? And it gives you guidelines on before, during, after, what is required. And it works in tandem with after you have identified compatibilities of dangerous goods that can be packed, or even if there is a single dangerous goods to be packed, you need to ascertain all these conditions prior to sealing and signing the container packing certificate. So, okay, I am going to, okay, 2826, ethyl chloroformate. Let's just put the packing instructions just so we know. There's a P001 here, okay, and 2826, class 8, class 3, and SGG1, SG36, SG36, and SG49. SG36,
49.
SG49, right? And is
Yeah.
there any limited quantity? Who knows? The question might ask us. We take a look at 7 quickly now. 7A, it says 0, right? So we just put the note here, just so if, for instance, the silly question asks us. So this is number 8, 7A is 0. Now we go to 2683, and 2683 and ammonium sulfide solution is an
Class
8,
5.1.
8,
Class 8.
3,
And then
and
primary
6.1, right? Right, okay. And when we look at column 8, we are looking at P001 as well, right? And let's just take the PG as well while we are at it. This is a PG2. The other one was a 2826, 2826. 2826 was a PG2 as well. This is also a PG2. And 7A for 2683 is 1 liter. Then we go to 2839, and 2839 Eldol 6.1. 6.1. Nothing else. PG2, P001, and 100 ml, right? If the question asks anything to do with this. So let's look at the questions now. The first question is, can these 3 consignments be packed together in the same container since it's heading to the same destination? And answer this with explanation. So which means now we have to do segregation. All right, we have to now see whether these consignments can be kept together or not. So when we look at the segregation table, we will first check this with this, then we will check this with this, and then we will check this and this. All right, so that would cover all of them. So let's look at first this and this, 2826 and 2683. An 8 and an 8 is going to give you an X, right? Yeah. A 8, a 3 and an 8 will also give you an X. An 8 and a 3 will give you an X. An 8 and 6 and 1 will give you an X. A 3 and 6 and 1 will give you an X. Am I right?
Yes.
Is there any thing in 2683 that I missed out, 16B?
The segregation, yeah.
Yeah, I missed that out.
Got SGG, SGG2,
SGG2,
SGG18,
SGG18.
SG35, SG68.
Okay, and then what about 2839? Did I miss anything there?
No segregation,
Nothing there. Huh?
nothing there.
16B is empty. Okay, so now when we look at these two, this one is telling us to look at acids, right? This one,
Yeah.
SG36 is telling us separated from
Alkaline.
SGG18. Am I right?
Yes.
And then SG49 is telling us separated from SGG6, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And then this SGG2 is alkalines. SGG18 is alkalines. Sorry, SGG2 is ammonia. SGG18 is alkalines. SG35 is separated from SGG1. SG68 is what?
If flash point below 60, segregation follow as a class 3.
If
Away
flashpoint is
below than 60 degrees Celsius,
below 60 degrees Celsius, then segregation as of class 3.
class 3, away from class 4.3.
Away from 4.3, is it? That is if the flash point of this cargo 2826 is below 60 degrees Celsius. Then this cargo cannot be, let me look at it. I gotta look at it. Ayyo, got no space. Aish. If flashpoint 60 or below, segregation as for class 3, but away from, okay, so it says that if the flashpoint is 60 degrees or below, segregation of as for class 3, but away from 4.1. So segregation as of class 3, but away from 4.1 is like what it's telling you is you still have to segregate it, because segregation of as of class means that there is a 3-meter distance, okay? So let's just keep this here, but let's first go to SGG1. So when we went to SGG1, we wanted to see whether UN 2683 is there, right? And when you go to SGG1, 2683 is not on that list. Am I right?
Yes.
No, it's not on that list. So SGG1 will not apply here. Okay. Then SG36 is separated from SGG18. So which means we now want to see whether 2683 is in the list of alkalines.
Yes.
2683. 2683 is there.
Alkaline,
Okay.
yes.
So there's a 6-meter distance now. Okay. So that means this one and this one need to be kept 6 meters away. And then SGG6 is cyanide. I think we can look if we want, but honestly, it's not going to make much of a difference now because it's still a 6 meters distance. Whenever it's an SG and it tells you to separate it from an SGG, that means it's a 6 meter distance. So even trying to see whether this 2683 is in a cyanide is actually no point already. But anyway, we look at it, it's not. So SG49 is removed. Okay, now we have to look at 2826 under 2683. So 2683 says SGG2. So SGG2 means looking at SGG2 for 2826. It isn't
Ammonium
there,
compound.
so remove. SGG18 for 2826. Tada.
Alkalis.
Yeah. Alkaline.
Yeah, but 2683 is there, right? We saw it just now. Same, it's here. Here they are telling us 3 meter in SGG 18. Here under SG 36, they told us 6 meters. So we're going to remove the 3 meter distance. It's shorter. SG 35 said that this product cannot be kept with an acid. So I'm pretty sure 2826 is an acid, because it's list 2683 is listed as an alkaline, and that's why they're asking us to keep it away from each other. So when we go and we look at SGG1, 2826 is there. You see, 2826 is in SGG1. But we're still going to maintain the 6 meters, okay? Because this is again separated from SGG1, and 2826 is in SGG1. So again, it's a 6 meter distance. And let's forget about this, because this is actually asking for a 3 meter distance from a class 3 when we have to take the higher distance. And the higher distance now is 6 meters. So which means 28, can you see, right? 2826 and 2683 cannot be kept together. There's a 6 meter distance. But now we want to know, can we put 2826 with 2839? Can, right? Because we still get an X here, all right?
Yeah.
There's nothing here. However, there was some things, right? Can you remember what 2826 had? SGG1, some more, what did it have?
SG36.
SG36, some more, it had something else, right?
SG49.
Cyanide.
Yeah, can you just read it out? SG49, okay, some more.
Separated from
No, I know, just read the column 16B because I'm not looking at it.
SGG1, SGG36, and SG49 only.
Okay, all right.
SGG1.
So we're looking at this with this, right? So which means to say that this item, if this is an acid, it won't be able to be kept with it. So 2839 is not in the list of acids, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means this SGG doesn't work. Then SG36 says SGG18 separated 6 meters from alkalines. Is 2839 an alkaline?
No.
No, it's not even in SGG18. So even this doesn't bother with us. It's not concerned with this. SG49, is it in a list of cyanide? Is 2839? No. So that means 2826 and 2839 are compatible.
Compatible.
Right? What about 2683 and 2839? This guy and this guy. Also, you get XXX.
Yes.
Yeah, and then here you had what SGs here?
SGG18,
Uh-huh.
SGG2,
Uh-huh.
SG35, SG68.
Okay, so we know that this is not an acid. We checked it out just now, right?
Yes.
So this one doesn't apply. We know it's not an alkaline because we checked it out already. Now all we want to determine is whether this is ammonium. Is it 2839? Is it in SGG2?
2839. No.
No. So even this doesn't. So this doesn't. This doesn't. And of course, this also SG68 will not apply because this is not a class 3 or a 4.1, right? Correct?
Yes.
So that
Yes.
means in this 3 consignments. 2826 cannot be packed together. However, 2839 can either be packed with 2826 or it can be packed with 2683. All right.
Yes.
So when you answer this question, because they ask you to explain, right? So now
Hmm.
let's go to the answer sheet. I move this closer away from me. And I go back to this, like I'm going to answer this question. Okay, so when I answer the question, the first question, can they be packed together? So you say UN 2839, right? UA
Yes.
2826, UA 2826, and UN 2683 have to be separated 6 meters from each other, okay, from each other as per SG, that was a SG 36, kan? SG 36,
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
And then, however, UN 2839 is compatible with either UN 2826 or UN 2683. All right. This, you want to explain it further? You want to explain further? Can. This means that you can pack either UN 2826 or UN 2683 with UN, that you can pack either with UN 2839. So the choice is up to them what they want to do. They can either take whichever cargo to pack together with 2839 because that's the most compatible. Then the second answer, the second question, indicate how the drums have to be marked and labeled. So each UN number, lah. So you can say, you can start this by saying for UN 2826 and then do this and say marks UN 2826. And what is UN 2826?
Class 8.
Yeah, we got to put the PSN first. Yeah, the PSN is ethyl chlorothioformate.
Yes.
Ethyl chloro. Wait, where did you go? Ethyl chlorothioformate. That's the PSN. And then you do this semicolon labels. Now you indicate the class. Class
8. Sub
A3
3.
and MP. Class 8 plus class 3 plus marine pollutant. So the same thing now you will answer for the other UN numbers, UN 2683. So marks UN 2683 and then look at the PSN. 2683 is ammonium sulfide solution, right? Ammonium sulfide solution, and it is a class 8. So here you want to put labels class 8 plus class 3 plus class 6.1. Yeah. Then finally, UN 2683, no, 2839, right? 2839. Marks UN 2839. 2839 is LL format, is it? 2839, 2839. No, it's
Yeah,
LDOL. LDOL.
Eldol.
LDOL, and then labels
6.1.
just one, yeah? Class 6.1. So you answered question 2. If these consignments can be packed together, can it be palletized, and what is the additional marking required? So because you cannot pack them all together, right? And they are all P001, correct or not? Actually, they are all P001. So you can actually palletize them. You can put these drums on a pallet and shrink wrap them, right or not? So here, when you answer this question, if the okay, wait, let's see. When UN 2839 is packed on the same pallet as UN 2826 or UN 2683, that means either or, okay, then the pallet must show the marks for both the UN numbers and the hazard labels, as well as the overpack mark. So depending where you pack the pallet, whether you pack the pallet with UN 2839 with 2826 or UN 2839 with 2683. When you pack it on the pallet, you must indicate the marks again, stick the labels again for the corresponding, and then in addition to that, indicate the marking overpack. What
But
documents will, sorry?
If I'm the freight forwarder,
Mhm.
unless it's all going into the same direction in
Yeah,
terms
that's the
of
idea. It's going to the
arrival,
same direction. That's the question.
consignee. If it's
Yeah.
going to the same consignee,
Okay.
it
All right.
doesn't specify that it's going to the
Going to the
same
same, just
consignee
saying going to the same direction. Okay.
because it just says various US ports,
No, they're saying that
right?
the shippers, the agent sends it to various US ports,
Correct.
Prunella. But you're right to say that it didn't indicate whether it's going to a single consignee. Maybe
Correct.
that
So
I
it,
should indicate that in the question. Okay, because not
yeah.
everybody thinks like a freight forwarder. Lah. All right.
Mm,
Otherwise, this question, you can just take it for what it is, and you can, because actually what question 3 is asking for is the overpack mark. That's all. That is
yeah.
the objective of that question. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's assume it's going to the same place. Okay. Right. So number 4, what documents will be needed to accompany this consignment? So what documents?
MSDS.
Yeah, SDS,
MSDS,
no more MSDS,
Sorry.
okay? SDS,
SDS.
right? No longer call MSDS from 2013. Okay, yes, from 2013, it's changed to SDS.
Yeah.
We removed the M from it because of the global harmonized system. Okay, the SDS, the
Uh,
commercial invoice, right? Packing list, multimodal,
Multimodal declaration form.
yeah, DG declaration form, and CPC if the entire container is shipped by a single shipper lah. So meaning that if the entire thing is just this guy's cargo only, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to say NCPC here. All right, because understand that my questions are not very specific. They're not telling you who, how many, what, how, but here they told you there are multiple shippers, right? But we're looking at the freight consolidator. Now, what will come together with this? What documents will be accompanied with the consignment? So these documents have to be accompanied with the consignment unless there is anything additional, like based on these UN numbers, there's nothing other than that. Nobody looked at the SPs, whether the SPs required anything additional for these consignments, okay? Because for 2839, there's nothing in the SPs. And if you look at 2826, also nothing in the SPs. And just to make sure you got it all right, you go to 2683 and just take a look there. Okay, also nothing there. So that's generally what you need. And number 5, indicate how you would declare this consignment. So here there are two options. So you say there are two options depending on which UN number is packed with UN 2839. So then you give an A. A is the first one that you want to give. So UN, say assuming you are taking UN 2826 with 2839. So 2826 was how many? 2826 is 10 steel drums, right? Right? And then you
Yes.
have 2839, which is 5 drums. So you have to do one by one here, okay? So first you start with UN 2826. 2826 ethyl chloroformate class 8 3. This is a PG2, right? PG2 marine pollutant. And then remember there's a class 3, so you have to go, because you don't have an SDS, you have to go to 2826 and you have to look at column 17. And when you look at column 17 for 2826, you see the flash point is 29 degrees. So it doesn't matter where you put the flash point, before the marine pollutant or after. If you put it after also can, but you must indicate the flash point for the substance. 29 degrees Celsius. So I don't have the degree Celsius, C, and then underneath here, I will indicate that I have how many? 10 steel drums by 180 liters. Steel and then you repeat the same thing, UN 2839 L-dol for the next corresponding substance 6.1. Is there any PG for the 6.1? It's a PG2 also, right? PG2.
Yes. 2.
And it's not a marine pollutant or anything. So di bawah dia kita indicate ada 3 steel drums. 5 drums. 5-1A. 5-1A2 steel drums by 200 liters. 200 liters. Then your second option fact, you don't put B, you just put like that. This is one declaration, okay? Or you just, so you know, this is one instance. When you mix this, then the second one you put a B, and then again you start with 2839 like this, and then you add the 2683.
You cannot
Crap.
paste.
It's a useless shite. So, okay, now it's up to me to type it all out, or for you guys to type it out in on your own and email it to me. But just to explain to you, so you know how this is done. So there are two options here, right? When we talk about compatibility with these three consignments. So when the question asks you, when the question asks you, how would you declare it? Then you have to give those two situations, one 2839 with 2826, then one 2839 with 2683. All right, so you can finish this portion of it as you understand how you need to answer this question. Number 4 tells you or asks you to list down 4 steps that are needed prior to packing the container. So can you indicate 4 simple steps that before you start packing the container with dangerous goods that you need to be aware of?
Check the cleanliness of the container.
Sorry, I cannot hear.
Check the cleanliness of the container.
Nanmuli, are you trying to say something? Because I can't hear you.
Check the cleanliness of the container.
Okay, can we summarize, because cleanliness means what? And are we concerned with the cleanliness or the seaworthiness? Right.
I think one is the seaworthiness.
Yes. So what we do is we put the container bit, okay, inspect, conduct, conduct an external and internal inspection of the container, right? That's number 1 we are doing. But before we even conduct the container, conduct the inspection, this is 4 steps before packing the container. All right. What do we do even before we conduct a visual inspection?
Get the STS.
Yeah. So the first thing is get the documents.
Yeah.
Right. The number 1 should be the documents. Obtain SDS, the same thing that we mentioned there, the MDGD, the invoice, and packing list, right? So you need that first. Then once you have this information, then you conduct the visual inspection of your unit, and then you check the packages, right? Check packages for damage and compliance to type of packages that, or okay, type of packages, you can say UN approved packages. Check on marks and labels, all right, for the packages. Then you can also indicate more than 1 DG, more than 1 DG to be packed has to be compatible. To be packed into a CTU, to be packed into a container has to be compatible by using the guidance of the segregation table. And then you can add some more if you want. There's so many more, but they only ask you for 4. All right, so before you can even start packing the container, these are the things that you'll do. First, get your documents first. Everything must be in hand. Then only you start inspecting, doing the visual inspection of the unit. Visual inspection, we don't need to break down the SAP plate line and all that we saw in the CTU code. Then we check the packages, make sure that these are the packages that are allowed. That means based on the UN number, they use drum, all that. Now you all know how to look in the columns to see whether those are the accurate type of packages and whether the capacities they filled are allowed. Then you check on the visual appearance. The package must be in sound, good and sound packages, no damages, nothing. And then the packages must communicate what has been packed in them, which means you are now looking for the marks and the labels on the package. Then after that, if there's going to be more than one DG, you've got to check whether they are compatible by using the segregation table. Now I can add more stuff here. All right, like before packing the container, I want to make sure I can add in the securing material is available. So many things that are there that can be done. You can mention them, but take the important stuff first. And the important stuff is this, the way I see it. Then the other stuff, like additional information you want to add in, you can add in. You might get a little bit more marks for taking that extra initiative. Then number 7 says, list minimum 5 audit checks that are needed before the CPC is signed. So before you sign the CPC, they want you to list 5 checks. So you know what you do here? It's so easy. You take the CPC checklist, number 1. The container is clean, dry, and fit to receive goods, because they're only asking for 6, right? Number 2.
Yes.
So all packages have been examined for damages and only sound packages have been packed. Number 3, all packages have been individually marked and labeled. Oops, labeled. Only compatible DG are packed in the container. Number 5, the container is placarded on all 4 sides, indicating the hazard it carries. There you go. So that answers this entire question. And this,
I have a question here.
all right.
I have a question. Let's say my DG shipments, I got an approval, right, based on the UN. By right, the captain should check the segregations, right, before they approve to ship my cargo.
Okay, all right. So
Okay.
this is the segregation of the stuff that you put in the container, is it?
Yes, yes.
It's not the
So
captain's duty. It's not the
captain.
captain's,
All right.
no. It's not the master's responsibility. It's the
see.
shipper's responsibility.
Master
you-
will only check if
Yeah.
it is on a flat rack.
Yeah, and anyways, it's not the carrier's job to check this. The carrier's job is only to check compatibilities between units. All right, because they do it for stowage. So when they want to store your container, you saw column 16A gives you a storage condition. So they only look at segregation in that sense. That means in that storage position that they want to accept your cargo, are there any other DG cargos in there, and whether your DG cargo is compatible or needs to be separated from it. But whatever is in the CTU, that becomes your responsibility. It's always the shipper's responsibility. If the carrier checks, as you were mentioning, Prunella, they are doing additional. It's not their responsibility. It's
No,
always
carrier
the
will
ship.
only check. Carrier will only check if it is flat rack.
Yeah, but it's not their responsibility. Meaning to say, if they don't check, you cannot hold them responsible. You know?
Carrier normally check the flat racks because the captain has to sign the certificate.
Yeah. You see, that is if you're talking about DG or non-DG here.
Captain.
Yeah,
captain.
you're talking
Captain.
about DG or non-DG here.
Whether DG or non-DG, if it is on a flat rack.
Okay, you mean the master of the ship is signing your
Yes.
your
Yes.
certificate? Okay, all right.
Yes, because that is only on flat rack, nothing else.
Okay, all right. But
So
please
what
take
if,
note. Yeah, but wait. I want to click. I want to reaffirm something here. Just because Prunella says that doesn't mean that your responsibility ends as a shipper, right?
Yep.
What is important
No.
is the shipper must remember you can't throw these responsibilities to others. That the ultimate responsibility when it comes to shipping out dangerous goods is the shipper's responsibility. So you can't go around and tell the carrier, why you never check yourself. I'm saying that the carrier is not obligated. They do it because they want to, because maybe for certain risk or liability reasons they are doing so, but otherwise it is not their obligation to check whether it's compatible or not.
so when go to the inspection, as a CPC inspector, right,
Yeah.
if they found this segregation is not compatible, they have right to reject the whole shipment, is that?
Yes.
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 So you
In
get argument with shipper.
Yeah, in fact, I tell you, for service providers, the duty is the minute you have like their, I don't know, the IMDG doesn't say it specifically, but the ADR will specifically tell you that the service provider has the right to reject dangerous goods that are not in compliance with the guidelines. All right. So when they go to pick up your cargo from your plant, if you are not using the proper packaging, the marking and labeling and all that, they have the right to reject it. So similarly with the CPC surveyor checks, they say, oh, your cargo is incompatible. You cannot pack it in the same container. So what they would do is they will refuse to sign the CPC then.
But there is a, what they say, they are also the service provider. So let's say they have an argument with the shipper or manufacturer, so they might lose their business.
No, but then let me ask you this question. Every year you have an auditor coming to audit your accounts, right? Before you submit it to SSM. Every company has to audit their accounts. A third party will come to audit and the third party will question you if you have spent money on yourself, you don't properly account for funds in and funds out of your company. And the auditor, when they come to our office, we listen to them, we explain to them. So if we can accept that auditor coming in for our accounting purposes, telling us where we have done wrong or right, and we fixing it, why is it we do not look at the CPC surveyor as an auditor too? Because the CPC surveyor is actually an auditor. He's coming there or she is coming there to audit and see whether the shipper has complied with the provisions and guidelines of the code. So if the auditor audits and it is against the compliance, the auditor then is responsible. That means the CPC surveyor, the person who signs that document, then becomes that's why they use the word responsible person. So obviously they would not want to be the responsible person. If it's incompatible in journey, it's going to cause an accident. And why should they stick their necks out for what, 150 ringgit, 200 ringgit? Nowadays CPC is that cheap. So, is it worthwhile or not?
450, Resma.
How much?
450.
Wow, I can get for you 150 also. Huh? Nowadays got 50 ringgit,
Yeah,
150
no joke.
ringgit. Yeah. But then
450 per
the
container.
Parimala is smiling. Mala is smiling so much because she's
Oh my
definitely
God.
going to call you after this. And she's going to tell you, I tell you what, Jane, I can do for you. You pay 450 what? You pay me 300, I do. Because by right,
Yeah.
Mala is probably just charging people 150 bucks, right or not?
Okay,
Yeah.
noted.
Like,
Ah, I know because I know the market rate is 150. So if you're being paid more, talk to one of these guys here who are doing
Yeah,
CPCs. You
yeah.
can get it cheaper.
I got the invoices, or you cannot see for me. I got the
Cannot.
invoices.
We can see that Swiss Alps only at the background there.
Uh, uh,
Right. Anything more? Any
okay.
other
Yeah.
questions?
If the CPC surveyor sign, then the container got in an accident or something blowed up, can the CPC surveyor be sued?
Ouch. Okay, let me tell you one story of one such situation that occurred. And I think some of you already heard this story if you have come for a class from me. But if you haven't, this is a real case. One of our paint manufacturers that are here, all right, and this paint manufacturer is very diligent in compliance. That means they follow everything. They follow the UN packing approval, packages, everything. Their paint has a 28 degrees flash point. They packed it into the container and secured it nicely. And the haulage guy took the container and drove it and was heading towards the port. As it was heading towards the port, the container caught fire. So the shipper got freaked out. He said, "Oh, the container caught fire. How did it catch fire? Who's responsible?" And of course, then all points finger, one will point to the shipper will point to the CPC will point back to the shipper that the shipper didn't do something, or the forwarder or the packer. All right. But upon investigation, it was discovered that the fire was a result of the haulage truck, because the haulage trailer, the haulage truck itself, the brake disc of that truck was already cracked. So what happened was, as it was moving, as it dislodged, it started rubbing against, two metals rubbing against each other. When it started rubbing against each other, there was a spark that flew off. And that spark, or few sparks that escaped for some reason, got into the container and initiated the fire of the cargo. So the question is the CPC responsible here? All right. In my opinion, yes, the CPC is responsible, because the CPC, you're not just checking the cargo and the unit, you got to also check the truck, that the cargo is going through. You have no choice but to check and inspect, because why? Then again, Malaysia didn't ratify ADR. Nobody is actually doing maintenance check of these trucks. All right. I mean, I don't know whether the companies are actually doing this, or they're doing it once in a while, or how diligent they are in doing it. So what happens is, the shipper was concerned here. What happens to us? Now, are we responsible to fulfill, the damage onto the container got damaged? So shipping lines are not going to sit pretty and wait. The trailer got damaged. The cargo got damaged, right? Luckily, nobody was hurt. So who is going to pay for those damages? Of course, the shipper has their own marine insurance. The service provider has their own marine insurance. Nobody got hurt in it, so it didn't become a big issue in that sense that there were no casualties or what involved in it. But however, this shipper now, when the next cost of insurance comes in, the insurers are actually going to find out or ask them whether they're working with third-party providers that are competent and have the compliance required to manage their goods or move their goods. Okay, so usually, yes, when you say, can I sue? Yes, you can sue. You can sue the CPC surveyor. But whenever you sue all that, you must remember the people that are getting very rich here is the lawyers. Just remember that.
Okay, second question, will the exam question be similar to this one?
You mean case study is like this?
Yeah.
The one I showed you just now is exactly how your case study will look like. It will be different UN numbers, probably different situation, but the gist of what it's asking you would be the same. So that's why I ran through this case study so that I can guide you on how you answer them. Then on Monday, the exam day is like what you did last time. You have an objective paper and you have a subjective paper, and then you have 1.5 hours to complete it. So that's all there is to it. And yeah, the subjective paper will have a lot of segregation, a lot of CPC questions, segregation questions, because we are also.
What is the segregation, like what? How many objective, how many subjective?
Wait, the objectives, just a sec. Okay, the objective paper, you have about 25 questions, right? And your subjective paper, you have 5 questions.
So objective is 50 marks, subjective is 25 marks.
Yeah, pretty much. 50, 25, and 25 your case study.
Passing mark is 60, yeah, like
60.
last time.
Yeah.
All right.
Reshma, there will be one case study, is it?
Yeah, one case study that you do on your own and you email the answers by Monday before you sit for the exam.
Oh, that's the part of the exam.
Yeah, that's because your exam consists of multiple choice, 50 marks, right? 25 questions. Subjective, 5 questions carrying 25 marks, and then case study carrying 25 marks. So that makes a total of 100 marks right there.
Okay, thank you.
After we pass this, we sit for another exam with LPK.
That is if you want to sign the CPC in Port Klang.
Oh,
Okay, that is only, and I encourage you to only go for the CPC exam if you want to sign the CPC. If you are not sure, don't do it. Okay, don't do it. It is not easy and you won't pass because let me just give you an idea. Out of the 30 people who do the LPK exam, about 3 people pass. So it's like a 10% pass rate only. And because the passing mark is dynamic, it can be 80%, it can be 70%, or it could even be 90%. So, and LPK is actually very ticked off. The last I had a conversation with Miss Quack, she was really angry with me because all of this, you guys, I mean, not you all, but I mean, pod users have been bugging us to tell LPK to run exams for them. So I've been bugging LPK to organize these CPC exams every quarter, and they agreed. But the problem is every quarter when they prepare the exam, 25, 30 people will sign up to sit for the exam, but only half or probably, like 10 to 15 people will actually go for the exam. And LPK doesn't charge a cent for it. So, but then they have to prepare all of these documents for everyone. So they got so ticked off in the last exam we had that they held on the 16th of July because again, almost 40 people were registered, but 20 over people came for the exam. So now LPK says, forget it. We're only going to do this exam twice a year. We're no longer going to do it 4 times a year.
so probably for the LPK exam, we need the book, right?
Sorry?
We need the book for the LPK exam.
No, they'll do like how we do. They'll give you parts of the code book like the DGL. But look, if you are going to handle DG and you don't have the code book, then what are you doing? I mean, seriously, what are you referring your consignments to without the code book? Okay, so yes, you need the code book. But do I have to take the code book and go for the LPK exam? No. But do I need code book? Especially if I'm going to be a CPC, you don't have code book, shame on you, because you got nothing to check on. All right.
Okay.
Anything else? I'm going to prepare the case study, Michael. I'm going to prepare the case study now. So I believe by 3 o'clock, I will have it available. And I will go into the WhatsApp and check whether all of you all can open it and attempt it. Okay. So that we don't have any issues. Do you have any other questions? Because, or any other area that you want to look into a little bit more before we end our session?
Case study, you want to put it inside your what, or can
It will be in our portal.
downloaded?
I have to
What
put it in my
can-
portal.
Is something we
Huh?
download or we
Okay.
have?
No.
The
It's just
answer?
like just now you saw me doing it. You will answer like that. You saw how I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You answered there. So of course you
Okay.
won't get your answer immediately. I mean, you won't get your results immediately. It has to be marked first.
Ishma, can I request like in a PDF form so that we can work on the answer, then we type it in? Because
No, you can, you do this. Okay, let me show you. You go to the thing when it's open, when it comes out, right? And then say this is the case study, assuming this one. You click on the side here, they'll ask you download.
okay.
So you can download it. Then you can have your own PDF document of it.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So if there is nothing else, anything else, nothing else, shall we end the session?
Yes.
Yeah,
On
and then I
Monday,
can.
Monday, what time do we start?
Same time like
Same
today.
time.
Same time. We'll start at the
Okay.
same time, finish at the same time, but I will have a trial paper ready for you to try out first in the first
Oh.
part of the morning, because I believe the exam is at 11, yeah, or 11:30. So we have a lot of time before then. So you can try out some trial papers. And then with the trial paper, you can download also for all you know. Yeah.
Maybe we can have more tries on the exam in the CLB website.
You mean you want me to go? I can give you more questions on the part 7, okay? But I'm not going to
Okay.
have more papers available. There's a lot of work on my end to keep preparing these
No,
papers, yeah? So I
maybe
will
more
give you.
tries on the one, the part 2, part 4, all that we can just try again.
Okay, so the ones that you already tried for part 2 is over already, right?
Yeah.
But you can view them, right?
Yes, I can view.
And you can tell where your mistakes are, right?
Yep.
Okay, so do you still want to do more of those?
Maybe.
All right, let me see if I can. I'm not making any promises, all right?
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay. Okay, if we have nothing else, shall we meet up on Monday?
Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good weekend. And
too,
don't
thank
forget to do
you.
the case study when it's up. I will let you know. I'll add on some more stuff on it. Okay.
Okay.
Nanmuli, I'll put some more 2s and 3s for you. Okay, to test yourself. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome. All right. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ishma. Bye.
Bye.